I'm Cody Daigle-Oriens, and welcome to StoryFest 2020. Due to the ongoing impacts of the coronavirus pandemic, StoryFest 2020 is going virtual. From September 15th through September 29th, StoryFest will premiere 13 live and pre-recorded author events, featuring top authors and creators in genre fiction, comics, young adult fiction, and middle grade fiction. This year, we have over 50 authors joining us from all across the country, and in cross-genre panels, they will explore the big ideas at the heart of telling stories in today's world. Even though we can't welcome you to the library's forum in person, we're glad to have you with us virtually. Thanks for being here, and enjoy StoryFest 2020.
James Byrd is a screenwriter and director at the independent film company Zombot Pictures. His films include We Are Boats and Honey Glue. A California native of Ojibwe descent, The Brave is his debut novel. Adrianna Cuevas is a first-generation Cuban-American originally from Miami, Florida. After teaching Spanish and ESOL for 16 years, she decided to pursue her passion for storytelling. The Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez is her middle grade debut. Supriya Kelkar is the winner of the New Visions Award for her middle grade novel Ahimsa. Supriya is a screenwriter who has worked on the writing teams for several films. Supriya's current release is American as Paneer Pie, and the upcoming Strong as Fire, Fierce as Flame, Bindu's Bindies, and That Thing About Bollywood. Lorian Lawrence is a writer and middle school English teacher from Connecticut. She has creative writing degrees from Wheaton College and Bath Spa University. When she's not reading or writing, she can be found hunting ghosts with her family. The Stitchers is her debut novel. Janae Marks has an MFA in creative writing with a concentration in writing for children from the New School. She grew up in the suburbs of New York City and now lives in Connecticut with her husband and daughter. From the Desk of Zoey Washington is her debut novel. AJ Sass is a writer, editor, and competitive skater. A longtime figure skater, he has passed his U.S. figure skating senior moves in the field and free skate tests, medaled twice at the U.S. Synchronized Skating Championships, and currently dabbles in ice dance. AJ lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with his boyfriend and 2 cats who act like dogs. Anna on the Edge is his first novel. Our moderator Shannon Doleski was born and raised in Cazenovia, New York. After graduating from Niagara University with an English education degree, Shannon was an English teacher and swim coach in New York and Maryland. Mary Underwater is her debut novel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Finding Bravery Through Books. This is our roundtable for StoryFest, and I'm Shannon Doleski. I'm super excited to have these amazing authors with us today to talk about bravery, courage, empathy, and heart. I'm super excited. We're just going to go around, and if you could tell us a little bit about your book, that would be a great way for us to start off. Supriya, do you want to start?
Sure. My name is Supriya Kelkar, and I am the author of American as Paneer Pie. This is a story of Lekha, who is the only Indian American kid in her small town in Michigan. And Lekha feels like she has 2 versions of herself. There's home Lekha, who loves watching Bollywood movies and eating Indian food, and school Lekha, who pins her hair over her bindi birthmark and avoids confrontation at all costs, especially when it comes to being teased for her culture. And when a racist incident rocks her small town, Lekha must decide whether to continue to remain silent or find her voice before it's too late and speak out against hate.
That sounds amazing. I saw it at my library a week ago. I was super excited. Andrew, do you want to tell us a little bit about your book?
Sure. Hi, I am Andrew Sass. I write under my initials AJ, and I am the author of Anna on the Edge, which is a story about 12-year-old Anna Jean, who's a competitive ice skater trying to take her skating to the next level and in the upcoming season, while also navigating a non-binary gender identity both on and off the ice. It's out from Little Brown Books for Young Readers on October 20th.
Yay, so excited. I love sports books. James, how about yours?
Hi, I'm James Byrd. My book is The Brave, so that's pretty good for this festival about bravery. And and courage. And my book is about a Native American boy. It's Own Voices, about what one life that he lives away from his culture, and then he moves to Minnesota to meet his mom for the first time and discover his Native American culture and how they deal with his issues, like his OCD or learning disabilities, in a cultural way instead of the way school kind of like abandoned him in the Western kind of society school.
Wonderful. I've heard nothing but amazing things. Adrianna?
Hi, I'm Adrianna. I'm the author of The Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez. So it's about a Cuban American boy who is from a military family. So he's used to moving around a ton. And he finally gets to settle in Central Texas and live with his abuela. And so his one big goal is to make sure that nobody finds out that he can actually talk to animals. But then a Tule Vieja appears in the woods, and that's a witch that can turn into animals. And so Nestor has to decide whether or not he's going to risk exposing his secret or he's going to work together with his new friends to save the town.
Amazing. So exciting. I love it. Lorien?
Hi, I'm Lorian Lawrence. I'm the author of The Stitchers, which is the first book in the Fright Watch series. It's like spooky middle grade, following Quinn Parker, who's this 13-year-old girl who's on the track team. And as she's running, she starts to notice that something really weird is up with her neighbors. They're not aging, they're not getting any older, and they're just acting super creepy. And so she decides to investigate with the kid next door, who's might be a crush, and they end up figuring out the mystery, and it's way worse than she ever expected.
I love it. It's very spooky. Janae?
Hi, I'm Janae Marks, author of From the Desk of Zoey Washington, which tells the story of 12-year-old Zoey. She's obsessed with baking, and her big dream is to compete on the Kids Bake Challenge show. But then on her 12th birthday, she unexpectedly receives a letter from her father, who she's actually never met because he's been in prison her entire life. And so she decides to write back, and they get to know each other, and then she finds out something pretty surprising, which is that he might actually be innocent of his crime. And so she sort of sets out to discover the truth.
Wonderful. Okay, so when they asked me to moderate this panel and told me that we would be talking about empathy, courage, adventure, and heart, I could not get Wizard of Oz out of my head. So we're gonna do like a little journey. We're gonna follow our yellow brick road to talking about bravery through books. I am such a dork, but just hang in there with me. The first question I have is, what kind of reader were you as a kid? And what's something that you learned through books? Let's start with Adrianna.
I was a very enthusiastic reader as a kid. My friends like to share their favorite photo of me in high school. The high school we went to in Miami, we could eat lunch outside on these benches. And my girlfriends are having basically this like photo shoot on the benches. And I'm actually laying on the bench and I have a book in my face and they're sitting on top of me while they're like taking all these cute photos, but I cannot be bothered because I'm reading. And that pretty much sums up my entire school young reader existence. I had my nose in a book all the time. I preferred to just escape reality. So that was really, like, books taught me that I could go different places because they really didn't teach me anything about myself, because growing up I did not read many books that had Cuban American characters, but the beauty of growing up in Miami, Florida is that your culture is all around you. So I didn't really like sense that absence so much. So for me, books were an escape, an absolute escape, because I was a super introvert, and at least I could socialize with the characters I was reading about, and I preferred that to real people. I might still prefer that, but it's okay. But yeah, that's how I was growing up.
I love that. No, I think we can all relate to that. James, how about you? What kind of a reader, and what did you learn through books?
I actually wasn't a reader at all as a kid. I couldn't do it. Something with my brain. It's kind of like the main character in my book. I would take words, like if I opened a book, the first page, I would take all those words and I dissect them and build other words and borrow vowels from this word and take the consonants from this word and put it into this word. So like my brain would not allow me to read growing up, and I hated it for a long time. But I slowly learned how to use it and how to have fun with it. And so my first book was that I ever read was Chester Cricket's New Home, and I still have it. I carry it with me everywhere because it's the only book I could complete, and it took me probably 2 years to read it. It's a middle grade. So now I'm living my life of being able to read books all the time. Like I didn't have that as a child, so now in my adult life I'm reading constantly. So
yeah, I think that's great that you're hoping like middle grade readers are gonna feel seen in that way, that you know, reading isn't easy for everybody, and so it's good to see other kids learn like you do.
yeah, and it was like, and what I learned from books is it's very simple. It's just like magic is real, but you are the magician. Like, this is what blows my mind away about books is someone opens a book and reads it and they fall into this world that they didn't know existed, and that's amazing in itself. But the real magic is the person reading. From an outsider, you're just seeing someone stare at paper with like white paper with black words on it, right? And that's it. But what that person puts into their brain is so amazing. It's like, it's real magic. And then, so all of you guys are magicians. And then now you're spreading all your magic out into the world, and people don't even know that they're getting hit with all this magic, and they're like picking up books and reading them. And now they're affected, and now they want to be a writer. And so like, it's just this burst of magic that I love about books.
I love that. We're like stealthy witches.
Yeah.
Andrew, how about you? What did you learn as a reader, and how were you as a reader?
Yeah, I was a really voracious reader growing up. I feel like every time my family went on vacation, my suitcase was like filled half with clothes and half with books. And I used to really pester my parents around like the scholastic reading fairs at school, where I'd like circle everything on the way home, and they'd be like, all right, you can pick 2 or 3 of these, not 18. And I was actually really into Goosebumps too, which is funny because I haven't really read any horror books since then until I read Lorien's, and then it kind of was a really great nostalgia trip because I remember how much I loved reading them and how creeped out I would get from them. But primarily I would read contemporary and historical fiction. I remember Number of the Stars by Lois Lowry having a huge impact on me as a Jewish kid. And just, I'm so happy that there are Jewish stories too that are now in the contemporary sphere, because I didn't see a lot of that growing up. But I think having grown up in small towns in the Midwest and the South, what reading taught me is that the world is a lot larger than the small little town that I lived in, and that people's experiences are not homogeneous. So, and then I moved, to the Bay Area, and I saw that for real. But I think for kids who lived in smaller towns, I think reading can be an escape, like James mentioned, and open your eyes to different cultures and different perspectives than you otherwise would have been experiencing.
Agreed. Yes, that was certainly it for me. Supriya, how about you?
I also read all the time. My aunt and uncle had given me the gift of a Book of the Month club. This was before Amazon existed, so it was really cool to get books in the mail. And so for years, for every Hindu holiday, I would get a box with 3 books. And I still have all of those books. My kids read them now, although some of them are kind of dated and some are problematic, so those have been hidden. But I loved, like everyone else said, the magic of books and escaping in books. I did notice that there were never any Indian American characters in books in my childhood in the 80s and 90s. And I do know that almost all the stories I wrote as a kid, my characters were all white with yellow Crayola hair, because that's all I really read about. And you know, I'm happy now that there are many more stories for kids of all backgrounds to be able to see themselves in books now.
Agreed. Janae, how about you?
Yeah, I also was a big reader as a kid. I remember spending a lot of time at the library, having my own library card. I always loved, going there and picking up my own books and checking them out. I read a lot of contemporary books, but I also read some fantasy, more like Roald Dahl-esque kind of things like that. And I think the biggest thing I probably learned was, I think it helped just broaden my imagination, like you learn how to be more creative by reading. And also, you learn about realistic things. Because like one of my favorite series was The Babysitter's Club, and I loved reading realistic stuff about real relationships between characters. So I feel like you can also, it's a way to kind of process your emotions and figure out what you're feeling by reading about situations between other fictional characters. So yeah, and I think that definitely played a part in what I write today.
Agreed. And you can see that when you read it. Yeah. Lorien, how about you?
I read a lot. Reading felt like something that was safe, that was, something. I was never like an athlete. I've always been such an in-betweener in every aspect of every part of my life. And it's probably why I write middle grade. And reading kind of helped me feel like I was fitting in. And I would devour The Babysitter's Club like Janae, but then I would also devour, Fear Street. And when I got to middle school, I started to read Anne Rice and Stephen King, and books that like were not really meant for me, but I was just reading them because I just wanted to be immersed in those kind of spooky worlds where the things that were scary were controlled. I was an anxious kid. I'm an anxious human, and books kind of helped me feel it's true, I speak the truth, but books always kind of helped me, and writing always helped me feel like I can calm my brain because I'm focusing on someone else's story and someone else's journey. And reading supernatural stuff for me, I'm a big scaredy cat, which I don't know why I write what I write, but I'm afraid of like everything, but I'm most afraid of humans. So I'm not afraid of ghosts. I'm not afraid of monsters. I'm not afraid of anything supernatural, because in my heart of hearts, I don't really believe in it, but I'm terrified of other human beings. And I feel like writing and reading stories where, the kids always won, right? There was always like a happy ending in middle grade. And that I feel like helped me feel safe in a way.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so like I was saying about the courage and the heart and the brains and Wizard of Oz, one thing I was being a dork and reading about Wizard of Oz because of this, that I got weird and like sucked into this hole about Wizard of Oz. Anyway, so the wizard, tells everyone that we are born with all of these amazing gifts, but we don't always let them rise to the top, and we don't always see those. And so our characters are going to go on this journey where they've got all these gifts, but they don't know it yet. What is a gift that your main character has at the beginning of the book? It's something they already have. Do they have courage? Do they have brains? Do they have heart? And what gift did you have when you were their age? So let's start with Lorien this time.
I think Quinn, my main character, had courage. In a lot of ways, she's a lot like me. And then in other ways, we're opposites. Like, I don't know if I would have gone to investigate, the creepy neighbors. Again, I'm kind of a scaredy cat, but she has courage, and she has this, I'm going to see this through to the end, and I'm going to find out this mystery. And then, what was the second part of your question? What
gift did your character start with, and what gift did you have?
I think empathy, and I think I got that from reading. I think trying to understand what other people are feeling and trying to, empathize with them and put myself in their shoes. I think I've always been a pretty empathetic kid when I was growing up, which is probably why I grew up very sensitive and a bit nervous. And Quinn has to kind of learn that. I think she's a bit tunnel vision through a lot of the beginning, and she has this goal, and she's, on this track team, and she's very goal centered, and she has to kind of learn how to let people in. And I think I was a bit of the opposite.
Okay. like that. Janae?
Yeah, I think Zoey also starts with a lot of courage. I mean, I think she has a bit of all of these, but you know, I think when that first letter arrives and she has to decide what to do with it, the fact that she decides to write back takes a lot of courage, because this is a person that you know, it's a parent, but not somebody who has been an acting parent in her life, and she doesn't know him, and she's hearing him from him for the first time, and it just takes a lot of courage to decide to open up that relationship. So I feel like that took a lot of courage for her. And then, you know, over the course of the novel, like as she's trying to figure out what happened to him, that takes a lot of courage as well, because she's only 12, and then it's a big undertaking to try to discover whether or not somebody was wrongfully convicted. So, and as for me, I feel like I definitely had a lot of heart. I was also very sensitive, you know, emotional, like very affected by things kind of kid. And I definitely did not have not like as much courage as Zoey has. A lot of the things that she does, I would have been like, no, like I'm very much a rule follower, you know, as a kid. So yeah, I think, yeah, for sure, the heart was the thing I was in abundance when I was a child.
Awesome. I love it. Adrianna?
I think for Nestor, he's got brains, and I mean, part of that is because he gets to listen to animals and cheat for the animal trivia team he's on. But he is an intelligent kiddo. And he's got heart, he's sensitive, you know, he gets emotional whenever his dad has to be deployed. He sees how that affects his mom and how it affects him. But I don't think he's found his courage quite yet to truly embrace who he is and what his situation is. He's kind of avoided the idea of accepting a home because he just assumes they're going to keep moving. And so that's a big deal for him. I think he and I are pretty similar growing up. I felt like I had the brains and the heart, but I completely lacked the courage to do anything with those two things. And so I actually think that's why it took me a while to finally become an author. I went to a school where I guess you could say pragmatism was very encouraged. So telling your guidance counselor you wanted to become a writer was like, nope. So I think it took me a while to find my courage to do what I really wanted to do. And so Nestor's that same way. So it was not difficult writing a character trying to finally stand up for themselves.
I love that. And I'm like comparing everyone's like journeys with their main characters and themselves. I like it. James, how about you? What gift is your main character born with?
I guess it would be maybe will, like a will to never give up, a will to never give up on his dad. Him and his dad don't really get along. Will to not give up on people because he doesn't have any friends. Every time he makes a friend, they get so annoyed with his numeric counting thing that he loses friends just as fast as he makes them. So I guess his will to keep going was his gift that allowed him to find courage and heart and empathy. But in my gift at his age, I didn't have any gifts at his age. I think the best thing about me was I was probably very naive. Like, I think that made me survive. I grew up homeless. I grew up like we were most of the time in a car. I never met my dad in real life. I didn't have any friends that had dads. It was always really bad neighborhoods. So I think looking back, being naive to all that kept me happy and optimistic, you know, because I would escape to comic books or a movie and be like, oh, that's how my life is going to be when I get older. Like I watch, you know, a movie and be like, okay, Denzel Washington is my dad. And then I would tell everyone that Denzel Washington is my dad. And they would look at me and be like, oh, you know, he's cuckoo. But to me, I was like, that made me feel better because now that's a better answer than I don't know who my dad is, you know? And so being naive.
Yeah. Well, I think you probably had that will and tenacity too. That your character
Maybe in my
yeah.
pocket.
Yeah. Andrew, how about you?
think at the start of her story, Anna has a lot of external courage. The first chapter in her story is basically her at her first ever U.S. National Championships. And if you've ever watched any large sporting event, you can see how large the crowd is, and in skating there are judges who are watching her every move too. And I think at that point, you know, there's some nerves involved, but Anna has always loved the sport of skating, so she's just right out there and doing what she's trained to do every single day. And throughout the course of the story, that external courage ends up getting challenged a little bit when the internal questioning of gender identity comes into play. And to make a note too, I'm using female pronouns with Anna because she hasn't chosen new ones by the end of the story, but is definitely non-binary. Some non-binary people use male, some use female, and some use gender neutral. So just to clarify that. But yeah, she definitely has courage at the beginning, and I think courage needs to mingle with heart by the end before she can get to that place where she's comfortable being herself and also still showing that courage on the ice to continue competing. And when I was a kid, I also figure skated as a kid, but I was about the opposite in terms of confidence as Anna. I didn't even like my coach watching me run through jumps in my program. That gave me an incredible amount of anxiety. So I would probably say my gift was more brains maybe, because I was always overthinking everything. I don't know if this is a gift or a curse actually, because I would always go through everything. If I made like one little mistake in a program or when I was speaking in a conversation to someone, I'd think about that for a really long time. And I think heart comes into play a little bit with that too. Like Lorien said, I was very sensitive and always trying to put myself into other people's shoes and seeing it from their perspective. So if I could have some courage from Anna, that would be great, but that was not my strength as a kid.
Yeah, but we all go on our journey to find that. So yeah, no, I love that. Supriya, how about you?
So Leica definitely has a lot of heart at the beginning of her journey. I think her idea of courage at the beginning is to not really show how much she is affected by the hurtful things people are saying to her. And by the end of the story, she has the actual courage to use her voice and speak out against hate. I think I had heart as a child. I was very sensitive, like many of the other authors have said. And I definitely didn't hide when I felt hurt the way Leica does, but I didn't really get courage until college, I think, when I realized that, you know, the form my voice took was not necessarily in confronting someone verbally, it was through my writing. So Leica comes to find courage several years before I did in the story.
Beautiful. So I'm going to start with you on this one, Andrew, but because you touched on it a little bit already, but stories have external and internal journeys. This is our yellow brick road. Can you talk about the difference between your character's external and internal journeys and how you wove those two plots together?
Sure. So Anna's external journey relates to figure skating and this attempt to take skating to the next level. She's moving up a level in the sport, starting at a new ice rink with a new choreographer who has a program for her that she's not super comfortable with. And that's where the internal journey sort of intersects and in some respects clashes with the external journey, which is Anna's goal to qualify for nationals again and just to make sure that she's making good use of her single mom's money and the efforts that she's putting into ensuring Anna continue to skate. But her choreographer wants her to skate to a program that's princess themed, and that's when Anna's internal journey sort of gets impacted by this external goal of getting to nationals again. And initially she thinks that she can, you know, I guess divorce herself from the program and just perform it like an actress almost. But the more she pushes that, the harder it becomes. So there's this sense when she realizes that she's non-binary where she wants to talk to her mom about it, but also realizes that doing so would be financially pretty devastating for her family because it would cost money to start over with a new program. It would set her back months, and she decides not to initially so that she's actually hoping to skip one of the qualifying events by skating well enough at an opening competition for the season. And then she's planning to come out to mom. And that whole, I guess just everything starts building up at that point where she thinks she can just ignore it until she gets through. But actually the more she tries to ignore it, the more it comes to the forefront and starts impacting the external journey. So that's the main cusp of how the two interweave, and until she gets to a point where she understands that her internal identity is not tied to skating, she has difficulty in terms of the external. So I hope that makes sense. But
no, yeah. It does. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I was wondering that just like in my own head. And so I'm glad you explained it to us. Very cool. James, how about yours?
I'd say that external and the internal struggle is, well, actually in my book, he goes on he's half Ojibwe. So he goes on an actual like a vision quest test near the end of it to actually bridge those together, the external and the internal. And he realizes that it's the same fight, and it's the same goal is to be who you are inside and outside, the same person. And so I guess on the outside, his struggle is to learn how to control his brain and like how to turn his curse into a gift, or into at least something that he's not afraid of hiding anymore, and then not afraid. And once you do that, it's like the Karate Kid. It's like you do a lot of useless, pointless stuff that, like, wax on, wax off, and washing a car and a fence. You do a lot of that stuff, and those are physical outside activities, not realizing that you're actually working out your insides, your brain. You're learning discipline, and you're learning attention to detail, and you're learning a lot about yourself. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it bridges them both together to be the same thing.
Very cool. I think it answers my question. Adrianna, how about you?
Well, I think Nestor's external journey definitely has to do with the Tule Vieja that's in the woods, because he has to first, the town thinks that it might be his abuela that is causing all the problems with the animals in town, and so he has to prove her innocence and go on from there. And so he's got to rely on sarcastic, snarky animals that are giving him really bad advice as well. But for Nestor's internal journey, there's a scene that's one of my favorite scenes in the book, and Nestor is comforting his mom because she's just had a really emotional moment that had to do with his dad being deployed, and he's telling his mom that there's always ceremonies when his dad leaves and parades when he comes back, but nobody ever talks about the middle when he's gone. And so for me, the whole internal journey for Nestor was about what it's like for him in the middle, how he deals with not having his dad present physically, even though they write and they get to like video chat just a little bit, how he's learning to grow up on his own that way. And so throughout the story, he is reluctant to kind of accept this idea of home. And I think he just is assuming he's just in a waiting period. Each time his dad leaves, he's just kind of on pause. And so the external journey comes in because he can't be on pause anymore. He's forced to deal with the things that are going on, and he's forced to kind of be his own person, even though his dad's not there. But he ends up using a lot of the things that his dad taught him, a lot of the values that he instilled in him. And so that's kind of how I wove it together, where even though dad is not physically present, he still has impacted Nestor's life and is helping him in a sense to solve all the issues I threw at him in his external arc.
Awesome. Yes, if animals are talking to you in the woods, you better listen. I love that.
Yeah, you might want to deal with that situation.
Yeah, you have to take care of that. Supriya, how about you?
Leica is, she feels like she has these two different identities, and just through being bullied every day, she sort of wants to hide the Indian side of her, even though she can't, just because of the way she looks and who her parents are. And a girl moves into their town from India, and her name is Avantika, and she sort of forces Leica to confront that side of her that's ashamed of being Indian through all these years of being teased for it. She's, embarrassed to be seen with this girl who has an accent, which is the same accent her parents have. And people at school just assume that they're best friends because they're the two non-white people in the whole school. And through their journey, she realizes that she doesn't have to be ashamed of who she is, and she should be proud of all sides of her and embrace it. And on the internal side, she's able to sort of come to terms with who she really is.
Beautiful. I love that. Janae.
Yeah, so Zoe's she has a few external journeys. The main one is, when she decides to start this relationship with her dad, is, that relationship is its own journey. And then, of course, when she finds out that he might be innocent, the search for the truth is obviously a big journey. She also has her baking, and is another kind of journey that she's going on. And then in terms of the internal journeys, I think there's a couple of things going on. For one, she's one sort of big theme of the book too is her need to kind of learn forgiveness, and that kind of comes through her friendship with Trevor. There's another kind of plot going on with her friends that she's in the beginning of the book not talking to, and they have to kind of mend their friendship. And that kind of parallels basically the reason why she doesn't speak to her father who's in prison is because her mom, is dealing with issues of forgiveness. So that I feel like there's that internal journey that kind of mimics what her mom also has to go through. And then there's also just the journey of kind of being exposed to all of this new information. I mean, when she first finds out that Marcus, her dad in prison, might be innocent, she doesn't believe that this is a thing that could happen. And it kind of opens up her world into more of the injustices. I think she's been a little bit sheltered from, everything that's going on in terms of the realities of systemic racism and things like that. And so she knows some of it, but not all of it. And so this is kind of opening her up to more of it. And so there's that internal journey of her learning more about it, especially with her grandmother's help. So yeah, a lot of internal, external journeys going on in this book.
Yeah. And cupcakes.
Yeah.
Lorien, how about yours?
The external is for sure the, what are these oldies? What are they doing? What are they planning? And how do we stop them? There's a little subplot with Mike and do they like each other? Do they not kind of thing? The whole fake romance that they have going on. But the internal is definitely Quinn dealing with her grief of losing her father. So that is really driving all of the external conflict, because I honestly don't know if Quinn would care as much about the oldies if her dad hadn't been so interested in them. And so because her dad was interested in them and it was kind of their little thing, like, ooh, what do you think they are? What do you think they are? And they would theorize about them. She's trying to hang on to a piece of him by carrying on with this investigation. Even, she makes really bad decisions along the way. She lies, she puts herself in danger and harm's way, all of these things. But yeah, I would say the internal is for sure her trying to kind of come to terms with her grief and grieve in a way that feels kind of natural to her.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so we have to wait. Did I get everybody? I think so. All right. I would just threw myself off there. So empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person, which we've all kind of talked about how that's a very natural tendency for us. How do you hope readers empathize with your book or your main character? Janae, I'm going to start with you.
Well, first, with Zoe being an African American girl, I feel like, and there's not a ton of, now there are more, but I mean, I feel like we're starting to see more girls, just characters of color in general being main characters in books. One thing, I hope is that readers will just, in reading about a girl living her life and experiencing these things, they might just have more empathy for people that don't look just like them. So if somebody's reading this book that isn't, a child of color, like they can still have empathy and understand what she's going through. And then when they go out in the world, hopefully they'll take that empathy with them when they're experiencing, and interacting with other kids that don't look like them. So that's the first thing. And then I also hope, that they'll feel for her in this journey that she's going on, with just all the different experiences she's having with her dad, with the friendship drama that she's going through. I just hope that they feel for her and they're rooting for her as she's doing all of these things. Yeah, I mean, at the basic level, I think that's it.
Yeah, no, I think they will. Supriya, how about you?
I hope that, readers who have experienced hate feel seen by this book. And I hope that those who haven't can empathize with it and, think about how we can all be more inclusive and kind to each other. There are some middle school moments in the book where the main character is mean to Avantika. So, on that level, I hope anyone who's been in middle school can sort of empathize with, being on the receiving end of that and also sometimes making poor choices to fit in more. So I just hope that kids are able to, think about being kinder and more inclusive overall from the book.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, middle school, right? Ooh.
Yeah.
It's a rough one. Andrew, how about you?
Well, like Chanel, I didn't see a lot of myself represented on the page when I was a kid, so I primarily wrote on the edge because I wanted to see myself on the page, even if I'm an adult now. So I'm hoping that other non-binary or queer kids can see themselves on a page, either through Anna or her friend who's a transgender boy named Hayden. And for people who aren't queer or non-binary, I'm hoping that the book sort of is a window into another person's life and kind of sheds light on how many different ways that the world caters to binaries, and like especially within sports where it's always divided usually into girl or boy divisions. And I'm hoping that if in the future, and it's likely that this will happen at some point in your life, if you don't know someone who's queer now, that you'll be better able to support your queer friends by reading books about someone who's different than you.
Yeah, I love that. Lorian?
I hope people empathize with Quinn. I guess I could say through her grief. Losing somebody is, something we all are. It's the scariest thing. Aside from the oldies and all these supernatural things, losing someone you love is the scariest thing that can happen to us as human beings. And if someone can empathize with Quinn's journey, that's huge for me. But also, Supriya mentioned those middle school moments. I'm a middle school teacher and I just see the roughness. It's brutal, but there are also such moments of lightness. They're still quite hopeful in this age group. They're not as jaded as high schoolers or, college. They're still like ready to learn something about each other. And so, hopefully not just my book, but our books, like I love this age group for that specifically, that kids can read these books and feel empathy and feel influenced by the behaviors of our characters, for better or for worse, but hopefully for better.
Yes, I think so too. James, how about you? What do you hope readers take from yours?
I guess empathy would be the number one thing I would want someone to take away from it. Just how to be kinder. I used to think empathy was kind of like a default setting in people or like common sense. And in today's climate, I see that it's not. It's so weird. Like a lot of writers I meet, they're born with it, or they develop it a lot sooner because all of you said, you're all very sensitive, and you all grew up feeling a little left out, and that immediately makes draws empathy to you. You know how it feels. And I think it's crazy that, like, I'm Native American. I grew up, and the only thing I knew about Native Americans was, they were savages. They um, were they were like animals, and America had to teach them, had to take their land to show people how great this country could be, or whatever. Um, and that's all I knew. And so when I grew up, you learn so much more about the Native American history from me actually being so angry at what I thought was real. So, like, my empathy came from knowledge. I try to learn so much and about my culture, that, like, empathy could be, you're born with it. You feel left out, so you don't want other people to feel left out because it feels bad, and you don't want people to feel like that. Or knowledge, you learn empathy. It's a taught thing, and it's a skill you acquire. And so I just want people to, I don't care how they do it, when they get into my book, either it could be out of anger, like trying to prove me wrong, and they learn something and find empathy, because, like, my book is full of, Native Americans, whites, I have African Americans, I have gay people, I have all these, like, from what I saw as a kid, jammed together, that in a lot of ways people kind of find controversial, as I see from some comments from reviews. But I love that, and I love the fact that I'm forcing that person to at least be confronted with empathy. Whether they accept it or not, it's up to them. But I love the fact that we can actually teach it. It's not something that we're born with,
Yeah, I really like that. Yes, and some of us are more in tune to it already, and yeah, some of us come to it later in life.
Yeah, even animals, like, even empathy for animals. My book is full of that, and so now I'm really obsessed with books about animals. Because
okay. Yeah. Adrianna?
I think for my book, the school that Nestor goes to when he moves in with his abuela is the first time he's gone to school off of a military post. And so he's used to being surrounded by kids who understand his situation of having a deployed parent, because they all do as well. So I think if I could hope that readers take something away, is one, I think the main one is that it's okay to not have everything together and not act like you have everything like together. It's okay to break down in the middle of science class because you're sad that your dad had to leave, the night before. And Nestor kind of mentions that kind of stuff of, now he's around kids who don't understand what he's going through. And so the two friends that he makes, they kind of find common ground, even though they do come from different backgrounds. And so I think that's the main thing that I would hope to take away, is just to show kids that it's okay to completely lose it and get upset. We don't have to act like everything's fine all the time. I was very much a child where my emotions were on the surface. I think I'm still like that as an adult. There's no doubting typically what I'm thinking or feeling. I don't have an inside face. And so I just hope that kids know that it's okay to be like that. It's okay to have emotions and to be out there, and that we can kind of help each other process all of those feelings together.
Yeah, and I think that's especially needed in 2020, like where we really have to look at what's going on and acknowledge how we're feeling about that all too. Yes, I'm with you. I think we have like time for one more question, and take your time with it. There's no rush. We're on our last one, that's all. Ruby Slippers, we all need help in our journeys. Who helps your main character? And then on the other side of that, who helped you in your publishing career? Who's been your pair of Ruby Slippers? Supriya, can we start with you?
So the girl that I mentioned earlier, Avantika, she really helps Leica on her journey, as does her next door neighbor, Noah, who she's grown up with, who's always been this ally and someone who's always been encouraging her to use her voice. He's this school reporter who's all about, speaking up. And for me on my journey, I guess I had a very long road to publication. I wrote my first book, Ahimsa. I wrote the first draft of it in 2003, and it was published in 2017. And I had hundreds and hundreds of rejection letters along the way over that decade and a half. But I think my critique partners were probably my ruby slippers, who've helped me revise and continue to improve my work.
Beautiful. I love that. And I can't wait to read your book. And I love the friend who's like, she finds annoying a little bit. I'm very excited about her.
Thank you.
Andrew, how about you?
Well, I think the interesting thing about Anna and the world that she lives in is that it's very progressive. Her coach is gay. Her mom is very supportive of queer culture, and she meets a new friend, Hayden, who is transgender, and yet because what she's experiencing is not directly identical to the people in her life, she still doesn't reach out for help. And I think she might have actually had allies a lot sooner in the book if she'd come out, but there was this component of not really being able to label what she felt because it wasn't exactly what she was seeing as examples in her life. So once she realizes that she's non-binary and is comfortable coming out to her friends and family, then suddenly her new friend Hayden and her a longtime best friend Tamara are very supportive. Mom doesn't quite get what's going on, but is still supportive and loves her. And Alex, as a gay man, is also somewhat familiar with gender identity as a concept. So he's behind her more in terms of the figure skating portion. But until she gets to that point, she's very much on her own. And I think that's might be relatable to some queer people who just, they know they're in a progressive setting, that they might have allies, but they don't have the vocabulary to explain their identity to other people initially. So yeah, and for me, it was a little bit similar where I actually didn't have the vocabulary either. It took me a really long time to come out as non-binary, and for years I just used male pronouns and said I was a transgender man. So the Anna story mirrors mine a little bit in that respect, except I was an adult when that happened. But when I started writing On the Edge, I made the decision to be a little bit more forthright about my own background, and I found a lot of supporters who either went through something similar or were allies in that respect. I had a great online class where I got to meet CPs for the first time, my critique partners, and I was a Pitch Wars mentor last year, and a lot of the other mentors were really supportive and have sort of followed me along in the journey. And then my agent, Jordan Hammersley, has been a great advocate for me too. I kind of started out saying, I always want to write queer stories, and I wanted to make sure that other people were on board with that, and she's been very supportive in that respect. So I feel very lucky.
I love that. And I think it's super important kids see what a good ally is modeled as in your book.
Yeah, sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. James.
So I guess the Ruby Slippers would be Orenda. She probably helps Colin the most. She kind of acts like the wizard. She gives him, sets him out on his path to collect the brain, collect the muscles. She introduces him to books, boxing, how to fight bullies, how to even know his brother. Because his brother isn't in the story, but he died before he met him, but she knew the brother. So he introduces him to even his family, and in the end, I guess, in a way, she revealed to him who he really is by having him walk that path with her, while she's dealing with her problems. So it's called The Brave. So I would actually say Orenda is actually the bravest one in the book. And my main character just has a huge crush on her. Yeah.
I love that.
What was the second?
And how about for you? You're in your publishing journey. Who were your Ruby Slippers?
Oh, my wife is an author. She was in the Sweet 16 group. So I got to see everything through her, and you know, it was her first book. You know, we both came from the film industry. She's an actress and I'm a director, and I got to see her break in and write a book, and then see like how amazing the response was, and how the industry is so much more supportive than the film industry. So I guess I got to see it firsthand through her, and so I guess I owe everything to her. Great.
That's awesome. That's great. Adrianna.
I think for Nestor, his ruby slippers, other than the animals that come to his aid, obviously, as animals tend to do, would definitely be the two friends that he has made throughout the story, Maria Carmen and Talib. Maria Carmen is kind of, she supports him emotionally. Like when he gets upset, she lets him know that that's not embarrassing, that it's okay. But I loved writing Talib because I'm a firm believer in humor still being super important, even when things are incredibly bad. And so Talib can always be relied upon to wisecrack when they're like facing certain death, which is great. And so I think also for Nestor, because this is just kind of the family dynamics that I grew up with, having an abuela that comes to your aid with a chancla or wooden spoon is also very important. So I maybe would trade out the ruby slippers for chanclas in my story. But for me personally, I was like Supriya in the sense that when I started writing stories, all my characters were white because I didn't feel like I had the permission to write my culture, or that would even be something that was marketable, allowed. So I think the ruby slippers for me were when I started reading kid lit written by other Cuban American authors, not just the broad Latinx term. I really wanted my specific experience. So when I read Pablo Cartaya and Nina Moreno and Carlos Hernandez and Celia Perez, and I could name a bunch, it was amazing because I thought, oh, we're allowed to do this, and people will want to read our stories. And so it was I guess it was the permission that I was looking for. It was the encouragement that I needed, that my experience was something valid to put on the page. So I don't know that I would have even attempted this story had I not read those authors first. So I'm a bit indebted to them most of all.
That's beautiful. I love that. And your readers are gonna love seeing themselves on the page too. And Lorien?
So Quinn's ruby slippers, I guess one of each. So left foot would be Mike, her neighbor, her friend. They have this banter going on. They're kind of sassy with each other, but Mike believes her. Like, she trusts him, and she has a core group of friends, but Mike is the only one she trusts with this secret. And then her grandma Jane would be the right foot. Her grandma Jane is just, I almost swore. I don't want to swear, but she's a force to be reckoned with. I'll put it that way. She was fun to write. She's nothing like my grandmothers were, but she was really, really fun to write. And she is, there with Banana Bread. She's also there to fight some baddies. She's there in the middle of the night if Quinn is just missing her dad and just wants to hear someone's voice. Like, she's there for all of that. And then my ruby slippers, I had a long road to publication, as probably most of us did. So I feel like my ruby slippers kind of changed throughout the course of it. And I would say I had some amazing teachers along the way. And I had some who were really kind of there to validate me. Like, no, you can do this. Like, you just keep going, you can do this. And I think without having, like, my mom will always tell me my writing's great. My husband will always tell me my writing's great. But to have these teachers who were like separate, like not biased in any way towards me, give me words of encouragement, it goes a long way. And I try to keep that in mind as a teacher, that kids do take things you say to heart and remember it for better or for worse. So I would say some teachers that I've had along the way. And my 2020 debut group, which many of you are from, has been so supportive and encouraging, and I've made a lot of friends, even in this horrible time of COVID. These kinds of virtual events and this online community of writers and newbie writers has been really, really helpful to me.
Yeah. Janae, do you want to finish us off?
Sure. So it sounds like Zoey has this in common with a couple of our characters, but her grandmother is her biggest ruby slipper in the book. She helps her, kind of makes it possible for her, facilitates the communication between her, Zoey and Marcus through letters and such, and also is there to kind of help give her the information she needs to kind of, while she's going on the journey, to understand what happened to Marcus, explaining to her, like what happened in his case from her point of view, explaining to her like why somebody could go to prison that doesn't deserve it, things like that, just kind of helping her, being her support system. And then, Trevor, who, even if they're in this conflict, he also ends up really being there for her in a lot of ways, which is kind of unexpected for her, and also kind of helps mend their friendship in a way, because she sees that even if they're in a fight, like, he's willing to help her out. So those are her ruby slippers. And then as for me, I also had a long publishing journey. Definitely had a lot of different people on the way, but for sure, the writing friends and critique partners I've had throughout the years, just their words of encouragement as I wrote different manuscripts. The one that got published is my 4th manuscript that I wrote. So, there were a lot that didn't make it. And so, but still, like, having their feedback and so I could become better, having their encouragement as I sent those queries out and got rejections to keep going. Also my husband, who kind of made it possible for me to actually get this book written, especially this book, because I started it when we had a very small baby in the house. So, just somebody who's willing to say, hey, you know what, like, go to Panera on a Saturday, like, go to the library, like, just get out of the house and do that. So I feel like that also was super, super helpful. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I want to say thank you to all of you. You've been an amazing panel. Thank you to our viewers, and thank you to StoryFest.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this panel, head over to our StoryFest 2020 playlist and check out the rest of our virtual author events. And for more information about StoryFest, visit the library's website at www.westportlibrary.org.